Hello.
Yes.
We are going in live in 5 seconds, right?
Okay.
We are live now.
गुड इवनिंग एवरीवन, सबको नमस्ते। जो भी भारत से देख रहे हैं और बाहर से देख रहे हैं, तो ये अवेक इंडिया मूवमेंट की तरफ से ये वेबिनार रखा गया है और हमने काफ़ी अच्छे पैनलिस्ट को बुलाए हैं। सॉरी। बेसिकली हमने हेडिंग दिया है, क्या कैन WHO वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कैन बी ट्रस्टेड। हमने अभी देखा है क्या लास्ट सो कॉल्ड पैंडमिक में WHO ने किस हिसाब से जो जो बताया सब गलत हुआ, और उसके बाद वैक्सीन मैंडेट हुए और उससे भी काफ़ी लोग मरे। तो और अभी नए वर्ड्स कुछ सुनने में आ रहे हैं। मैं यहाँ पर काफ़ी बेसिक से जाऊँगा बिकॉज आज भारत देश में इसके बारे में डिस्कशन काफ़ी कम है। क्या ये पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी क्या है, IHR क्या है, और HEPR क्या है, PPPR क्या है। तो ये सब बहुत सारे वर्ड्स, हाई एंडिंग वर्ड्स जो सारा यूरोप में, अमेरिका में, वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में घूम रहे हैं, इसका हम मीनिंग जानेंगे और क्या हो रहा है दुनिया में, किस हिसाब से चेंजेस बहुत फास्ट आ रही है, किस हिसाब से इंडिया भी उसको सपोर्ट कर रही है या नहीं कर रही है G20 में, वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम में। तो उसके लिए हम लोग आगे बढ़ेंगे। तो ये एक वेबिनार, एक अवेकनिंग कॉल है सब लोगों के लिए, कि वो समझे कि हम लोग को कंप्लेसेंट नहीं होना है कि अभी पैंडेमिक नहीं है, अभी लॉकडाउन नहीं है, अभी कुछ नहीं होगा। इनफैक्ट बहुत तेजी से चीजें बढ़ रही है जो हमारे हित में नहीं है। सो लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स आर हैपनिंग वेरी फास्ट एंड which we are very few but we will definitely try to counter it. So काउंटर करने का सबसे अच्छा ने देखा है लास्ट 3 साल से, क्या इट इज इंफॉर्मेशन। अगर आपके पास इंफॉर्मेशन है तो आप एक्ट कर सकते हो, और इंफॉर्मेशन देने ही हम यहाँ पर आए हैं। मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप सब ये वेबिनार के बाद ये जो लिंक शेयर किया जाएगा, आप अपने ग्रुप्स में शेयर कीजिए, इसके बारे में डिस्कशन कीजिए, और बाद में भी आपके कोई क्वेश्चंस रहेंगे तो हमको अवेकन इंडिया मूवमेंट में मेल कीजिए, हम डेफिनेटली रिप्लाई करेंगे। और अगर कंसर्न पैनलिस्ट से आपको रिप्लाई चाहिए तो हम उनसे रिप्लाई ले लेंगे। तो अभी ये WHO वर्ल्ड हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, मैं जब भी सेंट्रल स्कूल से पढ़ा हूँ तो वहाँ पर तो हमारा WHO का एक पूरा बुक था अलग से, जिसमें हमको एग्जाम देना पड़ता था 7th स्टैंडर्ड में पास होने के लिए। सो तभी से हमको इनग्रेन कराया गया है कि दिस इज अ वेरी गुड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है, हमारे हेल्थ के लिए काम कर रही है। और सब लोग शायद यही सोचते होंगे, लेकिन जब भी सो कॉल्ड पैंडेमिक आया और लॉकडाउन हुआ और फिर वैक्सीन मैंडेट हुआ, तो लोग जाग गए। अभी पैंडेमिक का डेफिनेशन क्या था इनका? तो पहले पैंडेमिक उन लोग बोलते थे क्या कितने डेथ्स हुए, लेकिन उन्होंने चेंज कर दिया कितने केसेस हुए। उसके बाद केसेस कैसा बनाया उन्होंने? RT-PCR। अभी हाल ही में ऑस्ट्रेलिया में फाइजर के एग्जीक्यूटिव्स को पूछा जा रहा था कि RT-PCR तो डेड वायरस दिखाता है, तो आप किस हिसाब से लोगों को क्वारंटाइन कर रहे थे, किस हिसाब से आप लॉकडाउन कर रहे थे, इज नॉट शोइंग लाइव वायरस। तो उनके पास कोई रिप्लाई नहीं था। तो एक फेक टेस्ट जो है RT-PCR, जो डेड वायरस बताता है, उसको लेके उन्होंने एक पैंडेमिक खड़ा कर दिया। और थर्ड, इसमें एक सिंपल चीज है क्या, अगर आप कॉन्टिनेंट अफ्रीका को देखेंगे तो अफ्रीका में ना कोविड हुआ ना वैक्सीन वहाँ पहुंची। इन लोग बोलते हैं कि वैक्सीन ने कोविड को कम किया, तो वो भी वहाँ गलत प्रूव हो जाता है। वहाँ कितने सारे नेशंस है जहाँ पर फ्यू थाउजेंड्स वैक्सीनेशन हुआ है, मिलियंस ऑफ पॉपुलेशन में। तो अफ्रीका इज ए गुड एग्जांपल दैट पैंडेमिक जो है वो एक्चुअली आया ही नहीं, मैनमेड था या जो भी था। मैक्सिमम डेथ्स हुए नेक्स्ट ईयर में 2021 जब वैक्सीन रोल आउट हुआ, और हर एक कंट्रीज में हमने देखा इंक्लूडिंग इंडिया, क्या मैक्सिमम डेथ्स आफ्टर वैक्सीन रोल आउट हुआ। ये सब डेटा है अच्छी तरह से। इसको आगे चलते हुए अभी WHO क्या कर रही है, क्या इस को लेके, ये हमको डराने के लिए, हम डर गए हैं इसको लेके, उन्होंने जो इंटरनेशनल हेल्थ रेगुलेशंस है जो 2005 में अमेंड किया गया था, जो हर एक कंट्री सिग्नेटरी है वहां पर, तो उसको वो अमेंड करना चाहती है। सो तो इंटरनेशनल हेल्थ रेगुलेशंस में क्या अमेंडमेंट्स लाना चाहती है? और किस हिसाब से ये पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी इन लोग बनाने का ट्राई कर रहे हैं, और अभी छोटा सा एक अमेंडमेंट भी उसमें आया है, उसके बारे में भी बताएंगे। तो और हमको इसमें क्या करना है, किस हिसाब से हमको अपोज करना है, और इसमें अलग अलग कंट्रीज का स्टैंड क्या है। तो यहाँ से हम चालू करेंगे। तो आई वुड लाइक टू कॉल अवर next author, founder of Navdanya Seed Bank, Research Foundation for Science, Technology, and Ecology. And I had a good chance to meet her when she was in Mumbai. Hello, ma'am.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. So I will ask with you, and I'll also introduce the other panelists in the meanwhile. That's Mr. Narasimha Reddy. He is policy analyst and advisory for agriculture, water, textiles, and urban development. A huge, experienced doctor. So, Dr. Narasimha Reddy, good evening. And third panelist is Yohan Tengra. I think he will join right now.
I'm here. Hello.
Hi. So, Yohan Tengra is a functional medicine expert and AIM National Steering Committee member, and a good researcher, and a lot of his research has awakened a lot of us. So, a very good evening to all and welcome on the webinar. So, Dr. Vandana, I would like to start with you. What is your take on the recent pandemic? Was it a pandemic, or is this not a pandemic?
Well, I'll begin with the WHO question.
Right.
Can the WHO be trusted? You know, there's an old WHO, which you learnt about in your books in school. And there's a new WHO, which is no more the WHO created under the UN Charter. And this new WHO can't be trusted. Whereas the old WTO was necessary for not a world government. We must differentiate between that and the fact that there was an international charter of all states recognized as sovereign and as equal in their sovereignty. And it was designed to put an end to war, because it came out of the fact that Europe had had this horrible war. It had had fascism. It was meant to get rid of the scourge of war forever, to establish conditions for justice and respect for all, for promotion of human rights and larger freedoms. And that's the UN we grew up in. It was not a world government. Every state represented its people. In fact, the charter begins with the sentence, "We, the people of the United Nations." It's supposed to be ours. We are sovereign people. The states represent us, and no UN system can overtake either sovereignty of people or the sovereignty of the member states. Of course, we watched how sovereignty of member states is being undermined by the billionaires right now. I watched it happen at the climate summit. The climate summit, climate treaties were supposed to be about the states agreeing. And the treaty was basically legally binding, was supposed to stop the pollution by the emitters and make the polluters pay. That's what the original treaty written in 1992 in Rio was about. Polluters should pay and should start emitting pollution. In the 2009 summit, Mr. Obama flew in and undermined the legal treaty. In the next summit at Paris, which in the Western literature is made to look like the beginning of the climate negotiations, it was the end of the climate negotiations. And that's where Bill Gates had taken over. He was standing on the stage with heads of state. And I've been in the UN system for so long. I knew that members are only states, not non-state actors, not corporations, not billionaires. How did this man get in there? And so I wrote the book with my son called Oneness versus 1% to explain the emergence of Bill Gates, not just as a billionaire, but as a person running the United Nations system. In the case of Climate First, then he took over the Food Summit. And of course, he'd already overtaken the WHO. For a long time, he was the biggest funder. Yeah. Why were the states not funding anymore? Why had the states lost their independence? Because it's important for those of you who didn't grow up in the days where the debates used to be about the Bretton Woods institutions and the UN system. Now, the UN system is one country, one vote. It's a tiny Pacific island has equal votes to America. A small, impoverished African nation can totally shut down the GMOs of America. That's the kind of power in the UN system. And that's what we did. We shut down GMOs from Africa, from small countries. And on the other side were the Bretton Woods institution, the World Bank, IMF, and the GATT, which became the World Trade Organization. So two issues about this. First, that in the UN system, it was one country, one vote. But in the Bretton Woods institution, because these were created in a place called Bretton Woods in America in 1944, exactly around the same time, and here it was the dollars a vote. Whoever puts more dollars controls the institutions. So if you will notice, every president of the World Bank is appointed by the US. Of course, now it's an Indian, but he's been appointed by the US president, Mr. Bagga, who used to be from MasterCard, I think. Every president of IMF is appointed by Europe. And of course, GATT now is WTO. Now, while we were negotiating the Convention on Biological Diversity to protect biodiversity of the planet, the GATT was trying to push intellectual property rights. So in those days, we managed to get through the UN system, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and our national law, the National Biodiversity Act, laws that made the biological resources the sovereign community resource of the local communities. Anyone pirating it as a pirate, the highest authority was the local community. Well, we've just had a new amendment of the Biodiversity Act and the Forest Act. And in the Biodiversity Act, every clause that recognizes the sovereignty of the communities has been removed. And the National Biodiversity Authority, which has been made a bureaucratic authority, has been made the representative. They can appoint whoever they want. And in effect, with biopiracy that we had made illegal in our laws and in our international laws, have been legalized. So when we talk of institutions, we must always think of the fact that we are living in times of huge change. And national laws are changing, international institutions are changing, and the new WHO is part of this formation. The FAO was supposed to be about food and agriculture. It has been a promoter of agroecology. But FAO is now run by Mr. Gates, Food Summit. He took it to, it's never gone out of Rome. He took it to New York and made the person who runs his Green Revolution for Africa in charge, along with CropLife, which is the representation of what I call the poison cartel, the pesticide ingredient, with World Economic Forum. Yeah. So from the people, we the people, it became we the corporations. Yeah. So climate, food, health. So what are the sovereignties at stake? First, the WHO is violating its own charter, the original charter through which it's created. Through writing this new health agreement, it is undermining the power of the states. It's basically undermining totally undermining the sovereignty. And the fact that WHO was supposed to be providing guidance, it is now not only going to create mandatory systems, but it is going to create mandatory systems in times of us having lived through the total falsehoods of how these mandates have been created. Now, it takes arrogance of power and arrogance of money to come out with this pandemic treaty and this new treaty, thinking people don't think, people don't remember, people won't notice. And that's why I want to congratulate Awaken India movement to help people remember, as Milan Kundera said so clearly, the struggle of people against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. We should not forget what the pandemic did. We should not forget. And it wasn't the first time. Before this, I remember two other times, the SARS epidemic, and before that, an H1N1. In both times, they hyped up something which wasn't a pandemic and bought up huge amounts of drugs from the pharmaceuticals, which were useless because there was no pharmaceutical. But more than that, in the case of the H1N1 virus, and it was very clear, the virus had spread from factory farms on the border of Mexico and US, because all the US polluting industry moves to the border. We know factory farms are the source of so many of the spread of new viruses. And yet, you will remember people going in these moon suits into villages, catching a poor tribal woman's single hen, which was a livelihood. So every one of these pandemics is not just a false declaration of a public health issue, as the crisis showed us so clearly. I mean, Sweden never declared a lockdown, never. Everything continued, schools continued, and they didn't have a serious problem. America, which declared such a huge, strict mandates, had very high levels of death. And there are new cases now, how the old people were dying in old care homes. And, I was rushing back to India when all this started because I didn't want to be locked down abroad. And the cover story of New York Times was disgusting. It said, "It is time to decide who will live and who will die." They were already working out who is dispensable, that the old are dispensable. People in the care home should be allowed to die because they're only an expense, they are not earners. And papers were published at that time called "The Case for Killing Grandma." They then moved to case for killing old people, from old people to sick people, to poor people, to the extent, I did my PhD in Canada, and Canada was a country without homelessness. Everyone had a home, everyone lived well, everyone was middle class. And now, huge numbers of homeless people because of neoliberal economies. People are being thrown out on streets and people are being arrested. And some months ago, the Canadian government passed a law. Yeah, it's illegal for you to be on the streets, but it's legal for you to commit suicide. There's a law to commit suicide on the street. Now, if you become a society where getting rid of people is your ideology, of course, elevating it through the billionaires to the level of an international system without the permission of the people of the different states and the different states themselves is, in my way, illegal in terms of the UN Charter, illegal according to Human Rights Charter. The UN Charter is supposed to respect human rights. The UN Declaration of Human Rights was created for this. And it's extremely important to see every line in this new health treaty that is violating both the rights of the state as well as the rights of people. I'm sure those of you, from the Awake India, I was in England recently for a festival, and the group that, does the World Council for Health brought me all their publications on rejecting the monopoly power over global public health. And I would suggest to you to go to their website and get the amendments line by line by line and get their briefs. So each of you, and then spread it. And I'm sure you all have it already. And if you don't, I'll be happy to send you. Just send me a message and I'll send you what they've sent me. But from my point of view, what are the sovereignties that are being undermined and why must we resist? First, it's illegal, like I said, according to the Creation Charter. Second, right now, the controller of WHO is with Bill Gates. He's done enough harm in the world. I wrote the book Oneness versus 1%, but read another book we've done with all the movements of the world, because you look at media, all the media is controlled by him. You look at health, the WHO is controlled by him. You look at food. I've done papers on how the seed is now controlled by him. Education, he goes into New York and tells the governor, why are we wasting real estate on schools? Kids should be made to stay home. That's what, during the pandemic, when it was stay at home and digital education from home, for them it was an experiment for the future. And the global reset, poor Mr. Klaus Schwab said it as much. The Great Reset was really about reset forever. That the pandemic was supposed to be a dress rehearsal of what will come forever. And that they brought this treaty so fast, really they're counting on people not organizing and people not remembering. So one is we should create new slogans. Don't just say don't trust the WHO. Just start saying don't trust Gates running your health. The man who kills people. The man who clearly talks about too many people in the world. Second, of course, it's about sovereignty. And I think for India, for those of you who can work at any level, including the subnational level, getting politicians away from the sovereignty question. You will have no sovereignty. Health is supposed to be a state subject. For Maharashtra, why did Kerala react the way it did? Because it has a sovereign health policy. How did so many states ask for ivermectin? Because we have sovereign policy. Now, this treaty will not allow any of this. So it's important to let the states that have done something different in health and public health to basically send letters both to the WHO as well as the center and say this is not. We as the states who have the power under our constitution to take care of public health, this right won't be taken away from us. And given how many constitutional rights are being taken away, and given that we're in a year of elections, this will have resonance. So start campaigns wherever you can. For me as a scientist, the sovereignty of science is so important. Because if one thing was compromised during COVID, it was science. The top scientists saying this is happening were just shut down from YouTube, shut down from every public platform. They're back, of course, now that Twitter has given them the space again. But the top scientists of the world, practicing scientists, not the model makers, working on Mr. Gates' grant. Every model maker who was predicting millions and millions of deaths was basing it on the basis of computer models. not real practice on the ground. So we definitely need to talk about the sovereignty of science. And at a World Economic Forum, the Deputy Director General of the UN was speaking at the World Economic Forum not that long ago, Melissa Fleming. And she said something that is totally unacceptable. Because for me, science is about knowing, science is about seeking, science is about freedom to know, science is about sovereignty, sovereignty of the mind. This is what the lady says. We own the science, and we should let the world know that we own it. This is what this mandate is all about. We can cook up everything, and because we have a mandate, we can cook up a pandemic when we want to. And even when there are cures, we can deny that they are cures and criminalize them. Of course, we should know from experience. I gave the 150th anniversary talk for the Kutakal Ayurveda, which was the first Ayurveda which organized itself. And where did Dr. Boria make it? Because Ayurveda was being criminalized by the British. And he says, to protect Ayurveda, I'll have to have a pharmacy, I'll have to have a college, I'll have to do everything the way they do it, so they can't ban us. So they've been trying to shut down indigenous systems. They are everywhere trying to shut down homeopathy, natural cures. Dr. Mercola, was a doctor, lost his license, and now he deals with herbal medicine, and even that, they're after him. So we are in a time of health fascism. Just like the corporations are creating food fascism, we are in a time of health fascism, and that's how we should deal with this challenge. The latest, of course, is fascinating because, for those of you who will be in Delhi on 1st October, I'm inviting you now for our Bhumi Festival at India International Center. Every year we celebrate the earth, every year with a different theme. This year our theme is climate change and the future of food, because food is being made the new victim. And Mr. Kerry, who's the UN envoy on climate, keeps talking about how farmers must disappear if we've got to save the climate. Now, yes, it's true, industrial farming and globalized food systems contribute 50% of the emissions, and I've done a book on this called Soil Not Oil. But ecological agriculture is the solution because it heals the cycle, heals the planet, and we have enough data now that 30 gigatons rests in organic farming. But he wants to wipe out all agriculture, beginning with small-scale agriculture. The reason I'm bringing this up is Mr. Kerry, who'd like to see the end of farming, his daughter, Dr. Vanessa Kerry, has just been appointed the first ever envoy in the WHO on climate change and health. What does this mean? It means they're going to link the fake narrative they're creating on the pandemics with a fake false solutions in climate change. Already the 4 fake solutions that come from Bill Gates, and my recent books are all on this. First, geoengineering, change the climate. If there's pollution, make more pollution. Second, buy up land, net zero. We won't stop polluting, but we take other people's lands for carbon sinks. Third, take food, lab food. That's why the slogan is farms without farmers, farming without farmers, food without farms. That's the slogan. And they've got people writing, lab food will destroy farming and save the planet. This is nonsensical science. Good farming is the only solution to health. Good farming is the only solution to the climate habit. Good farming is the only solution to reversing biodiversity loss. This is what we do in Afghanistan. And so they just want to be free to tell every lie under the sun because they own the science. And that's why I call it knowledge fascism, health fascism, a dictatorship of the highest order. And for all lovers of freedom, freedom of knowledge, freedom of being able to have health sovereignty, of food sovereignty, I'm so glad you've organized this. We join hands. to, basically say this emperor doesn't have clothes. It's very, very naked.
Very well said, Dr. Shiva. Now, my question to you is that since you have been, many people throughout the world, many nations, many civil society people, many politicians also, and this IHR is being negotiated. So, do you see any countries which is opposing it, or
I don't monitor the negotiations, but I know people who are monitoring it daily, and
right?
I could ask them. I could ask them for sure.
And the bad thing is that India is now in total control of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You're well aware.
Yeah.
We have been a little successful in sending him a murder notice from Bombay High Court, Dr. Snehal Lunawat's murder case. And he's rightly said that he is a murderer and we are after him. Let's see, the courts can take up the dates. And
What thing I commit to you is I will write to colleagues who constantly watch the negotiations
right.
and ask them for which countries are opposing. But as in the case of seed, when I knew they wanted patents of seed, I said, we have to stop that. But even if we don't, we've got to refuse accepting that in our lives and do a satyagraha. That's why we did seed satyagraha and saved seeds. We said we don't care what law there is. And so in our minds, we should be ready for a health satyagraha. That, our bodies, ourselves was the feminist slogan. So I think two things you all can anyway do is, compile all the bad science of the COVID and all the good doctors. Now it's all over the place. Just compile the references. They said this, but this happened, and here's the proof. They said this happened. How can the guys who told these lies be trusted with that? That's the way you deal.
That's right. We have to show the truth to the public. What we have been telling upfront now, it has become truth, and what they have been telling is conspiracy theories. So opposite of that. So also I want to ask you then, globally or India may, what now we should do together to oppose this treaty? We are very few of us in numbers who know about this and who are talking about it.
Spread the word, get to every Ayurvedic doctor, every practitioner of different health systems, to every sensitive person in the allopathic system. Get to them and ask them to make their inputs. Get to sensitive assembly members. And of course, Parliament is not being listened to, but still, one should try. One should try. And globally, like I said, I will make sure that we know exactly which countries are. It will be the small countries. It will be the African countries. It's not an accident that the African countries just had a big summit of their own. And they said to the West, your money cannot make us afraid. Your armies cannot make us afraid. We will defend our freedom. And after all, we did that against colonialism. And this is just a new version of colonialism. It's the old colonizers thinking, we'll wear new clothes and fool them now. And it's the old colonialism. So some of our tactics have to be the old style of freedom. And definitely for everyone, the biggest thing we can do is we must know our health. We must eat the food that gives us health, and we must grow plants that give us health. If we just say our community will grow the 20 plants that take care of everyday diseases. I work with farmers on seed saving and agroecology. And when we finally met after COVID, it was unbelievable. One of the other, poorest farmer, हमें तो कुछ नहीं हुआ. हमने तो ये काढ़ा बनाया, मेरी दादी बनाती थी. हमने तो ये पौधा उगाया. हमारे गांव में कोई भी नहीं बीमार. Again, don't forget. After all, nature has given us every remedy. Our knowledge systems have given us every remedy. And basically, we know this age, power resides in creating fear. And not being defeated by the rule of fear is to not become afraid and to celebrate life in all its richness. So these are all the ways, they can't take that away from us. To
Basically, we
resist
have
as
to,
much as you can. Resist,
yeah,
resist, but also grow the alternative.
rightly said. That's what we have to do. We have to resist. And of course, if you have heard, I would like to tell you that India has made their own health organization. It is called Universal Health Organization, UHO, and we are working together with them. So let us try to take more membership in UHO and grow UHO as a parallel organization to WHO. So we will have something in our hands also. So thank you, Dr. Vandana Shiva. Please be on board. Next, Dr. Narasimha Reddy. Uh, I would like you to start with what is IHR amendments for our public to know. As I said before, general public are not aware of this. So please start.
Thank you, Amber. I think Vandana has very clearly laid out what we are discussing, sovereignty, and how it is under threat from the international organizations, basically the billionaires. And we have been fighting, not just WHO. Before we had a severe fight on WTO, seed sovereignty, many other issues for the past 35 years. So this is now a latest threat to the people's sovereignty. So now we can see that WHO is power hungry. Why? I think you all know why and what, but how they want to do it. I think that's what we'll look into it, because I'll go into detail, because one of your questions was to Vandana, what's happening with the negotiations. In fact, they are not negotiations. You just push everyone into a room and then say, discuss this. In fact, there is a negotiation fascism as well, that we can see. Anyway, I think given within the time, this is what just we have two sections. One is the WHO and the Bill Gates in this, and within the WHO we have international health regulations which are referred by Vandana as well, and World Pandemic Treaty. Now they are calling it Accord. It's a pandemic accord now, no longer a treaty. And then the Health Emergencies Preparedness and Response, HEPR. Now there are a lot of abbreviations which are going around. Sometimes it confuses us, but that's how they are pushing. And of course, I'll see if we have time, then I'll look at, I'll talk to you about what PMGF and the investment being made by Bill Gates. But otherwise, I think even Johan is also ready with that. So within WHO, they are bringing basically two instruments, but within them there are other instruments where this power is trying to be built, power for WHO. So one is, of course, there is a UN Pandemic Prevention, Preparedness and Response. So this is PQVIVE. And then you have proposed amendments to international health regulations for 2005. And then the most important thing is the International Pandemic Accord. Then the global architecture they want to build for health emergency preparedness, response and resilience, HEPR. Then a new medical countermeasures platform. And then financial replenishment mechanism for WHO. And then there is a global pandemic fund. Now they are calling it the pandemic fund. So these are 7 ways the WHO is trying to grow itself as an international organization. So they keep saying directing and implementing health authority. That's a word they keep using in most of their documents nowadays. So I'll go one by one, but I'll linger more on the third point, that is the International Pandemic Accord. Now this UN, how UN has come about. I think Vandana was mentioning, how UN has built itself as where people's sovereignty has been emphasized. But then through now WHO wants to upstage UN as well, and they have succeeded. That's very surprising because this statement, they call it zero draft, came from UN. There was a meeting on 20th September 2022, sorry. And that's a 14-page declaration. And you can see they want to prioritize this PPP, prevention, preparedness, and response, pandemic response. And you can see the declaration saying, commit to promote WHO as the directing and coordinating organization. So UN has already ceded its power to WHO on health. But if you look at what is inside all these instruments, I think WHO is trying to upstage even UN itself, and that's very a serious concern. So now this UN General Assembly, they are going to convene again in 2026, and they are going to ratify or review what WHO will be doing in the next 2 years. So by 2024, May 2024, the WHO wants to complete all these negotiations, and they'll have an accord by May 2024 in the World Health Assembly. So this UN is saying that they are going to review that in 2026. So that means already UN has agreed to this. Importantly, I picked up a few points. You can see UN is saying take measures to address the negative impact of misinformation and disinformation on public health measures. So what the measures which have been pushed, we know how they have been pushed. So now they are prepared on this. They are preparing themselves on information as well. So their idea is very deep and very, I think it's very alarming. And from that pandemics, the assumption is already call for timely, urgent, and continued response. So that means pandemic will be there all the time, and they are going to build the entire edifice of WHO on that. The second, as I mentioned, it is about international health regulation. Now these regulations were developed in 1969 so that WHO can work on various diseases or infections which might be coming up across the world, and that they were revised, last revised in 2005, and now they are now moving towards amending this international health regulations. So they asked their members, 194 members in the last WHO World Health Assembly, and some of the countries have given 307 amendments to that. But then even before that, this World Health Assembly in 75th Assembly, they have amended 5 articles, but these are related to procedure. So one of the procedures is, IHR, whatever IHR has been approved by the World Health Organization, the members usually had 18 months time to ratify them. So this amendment, reduces that from 18 to 12. So there are other process amendment. Basically, they are in a hurry, so they want IHR to be approved by May 2024. So and what it is, I think, let's see. And again, it's a almost 46-page document with a lot of jargon. I just picked up a few, and Article 1 to 3 refer to the respect for fundamental rights, and that is proposed for deletion because they think once they have given the mandate, people do not have a right at all, and it's also it will give absolute power on other sectors as well. It's not just the health. So they are, the multi-sectoral link is being built through these regulations. So it's not just a declaration of, public health emergency of international concern, PHEIC. It's much beyond because it's part of the preparedness architecture, which we'll discuss later. But then two important things, this Director General of WHO, he, under IHR, he has this power to declare a pandemic. Now this is being redefined, but then there have been questions raised, what happened to the pandemics which have been already declared, and how do you map the severity of a pandemic? So somewhere an infection is there, and how do you say that it's going to be a serious threat to the entire world population? So those are still, I think, very vague in that sense. But additionally, they brought, it's the PHEIC is international, but now they are bringing public health emergency of regional concern. So WHO has 6 regional directors, and these regional directors can declare a local regional pandemic. So this is something additional which is also coming up. But importantly, I think still it's very vague why WHO wants a pandemic accord, and yet they want international health regulations amended, because the content of both two-track negotiations which are happening, they overlap in many ways. So why still they want IHR and also accord? There's no guarantee. I mean, there's no clarity on that. And of course, maybe it's also a strategy where they want to overwhelm the member states with a commitment, because IHR is mostly happening internally, within the member states of the WHO. But somewhere the accord is, it is happening at a higher level where countries are involved. Tedros, he once said, IHR generally is dealt with by the ministers of health, but he wants the heads of states to be involved. So he wants to lord over heads of states. That's why the two-track approach they are continuing. So as you can see, this May 27, 2022 process amendments, they are still not yet approved by all the states. So they have time until December 1, 2023. So if you are talking of advocacy, I think this is one which we have to work on, where India should not accede to this process amendments which reduce the time and which reduce the maneuverability of the member to accept or reject these IHR amendments which are going to come up. So and then the 300 plus amendments They want to finalize by mid-January 2024. So we have hardly 5 months to look into that process. Now, as I mentioned, this is the most important, the International Pandemic Accord. They constituted, they said a few countries came together, including Russia and some European countries, and they asked for a coordinated response to pandemic because during COVID-19 there was no coordination and a lot of failures have happened. So from there, WHO was asked to develop a treaty, and then WHO constituted a international negotiating body, INB, and that INB sat through and they issued a draft. They call it zero draft on 1st February 2023, this year. But this zero draft had 38 articles and a 32-page long document, which was again discussed by this international negotiating body. I think they had 6 meetings so far. Last June, I think just 2 months back, they again had a 43-page version, which was improved from the earlier zero draft. But then there is an internal document. They said there is a 203-page document where members of the WHO, they raised concerns, and this document has all the objections or concerns raised by the members, but this was not shared outside the WHO. I think this is still under the wraps. So we are looking at this 43-page version, which is of course available, and I have picked up a few points from there. Now this 43-page version of INB 4, it has 41 articles. So earlier it was 38, now it has become 41. I'm not going through all the 41, but I just picked up a few. The important thing is usage of terms, the terms, the definition of the terms. I think that's again indicates the thinking behind that. So one of the terms is infodemic. As a pandemic, we use pandemic, and they are saying infodemic. What is this infodemic? In their own words, it is too much information, including false or misleading information in digital and physical environment during a disease outbreak. So basically they want to regulate infodemic. That means they want to regulate information flow as well. I don't know what is this too much information. In fact, we have been crying about lack of transparency across the world when COVID-19 was being managed or being mismanaged. And then you can look at the important definition of pandemic. So they are saying global spread of a pathogen or variant that infects human population with limited or no immunity through sustained and high transmissibility from person to person, overwhelming health systems. Now this health systems, it's a very tricky word they are using everywhere, but sometimes they use it in a different context. There's no the Oxford Dictionary definition, but health system is what they think as health system, not what we think as a health system, which is a very comprehensive universal health system with severe morbidity and high mortality, causing social, economic disruptions, all of which require effective national and global coordination for its control. Now you can see they are entering the social and economic disruptions by talking about a definition of a pandemic in a wider sense. Now the other thing is a common but differentiated responsibilities. Now this has been in the climate change negotiations. This is being frequently used because in climate change we know there are developed countries which have been polluting the earth for almost 100, 200 years. And then there are countries whose contribution to this pollution is almost zero. So that's where this word has come about. We have a common purpose, but with a differentiated responsibility. That means the liability is inherent in this, but the way this word is used in this accord is basically not about liability, but it is more about the burden, shifting the burden onto the nation state by using the same terminology which was used in climate change. The other one is the One Health approach. So, what is this One Health? I think that's again, we think that, okay, one is pushing a particular treatment protocol, which is apparently clear, but it also inherently tries to, drag food and other systems as well. So, what Vandana was mentioning, how food is being colonized and how they are trying to change the food itself. So this One Health tries to link itself with those concepts and approaches as well. Now the accord, clearly says there has to be a central role for WHO. So there is a specific article which says how this central role of WHO will be there. But then nowhere, among all the articles, 41 articles, nowhere WHO liability is mentioned. I mean, because decisions are taken by WHO, but the liability is not there. There are articles on accountability, but those accountability pertains to national health systems or sovereign nations. So they are trying to blame, or they are saying like what we have seen with regard to vaccines. Like I think Amber was mentioning Australia. I think yesterday or today they had the discussion. So Pfizer simply said it's your burden, not ours, because of vaccine injury. It's the headache of the Australian government, not the company which has brought this. So this kind of language where the liability is on the governments is there, but there is no liability on the WHO and also on the manufacturers of all these diagnostics or everything. And then importantly, they are proposing a pathogen access and benefit sharing system. This was very interesting for me. Basically, it has alarmed me. Pathogen access and benefit sharing system. So they are saying access to pathogens with pandemic potential and the corresponding benefit sharing. So most of you might know the gain of function theory, where we know how Fauci worked with China, and then the Wuhan lab issue, all those are there. So pathogens with pandemic potential, the access, and then the corresponding benefit sharing. So this is how they are integrating their work, which is a continuous process. And then they are trying to say we are trying to address a pandemic. So collection of patient specimens, material and data. So this system says WHO will have access to the patient specimens, material and data across the world once a pandemic is declared. So that means this is a business proposition. We know how patient information is used and misused and monetized by the corporate system. And of course, WHO Director General shall determine, and shall, now most of the words, shall is used when they want to impose or when they want to commit the nation states. So when they say parties, I'll come to that, the parties which was mentioned there. Who are these parties of this accord? One is the nation states, and then they also had regional economic cooperation organizations as well, and then the observers as well. So the observers includes Gavi, it includes all the Global Alliance for Vaccine Immunization, all the companies, including BMGF, all of them are there in various forms. They are observers, but then the parties includes regional economic cooperation organization like G7, G20, Shanghai Corporation. So all those will be also part of the accord as members. Now here the clearly what Vandana mentioned, one vote, one nation. That's a UN system. But here you can see they brought in new members and they are going to compete with the sovereign nations as a voting member. I think that will mean they want to push the decisions which they want to, even if there is a opposition from different countries. So this shall, I think, keeps on repeating wherever they commit the governments. And then there is this Article 16, which says once a pandemic is declared, they will adopt a whole of government and whole of society approach. That means WHO will take over your governance, Indian governance, Pakistan, whichever country, the governance will have to work under WHO once a pandemic is declared, and they will adopt a whole of the society approach. And you can see the parties shall, as appropriate, conduct research and inform policies on factors that hinder adherence to public health and social measures in a pandemic. So through this, I think they want to influence the public policies of different sectors. So it could be food, it could be economics, it could be anything. It could be because whichever they think is hindering the measures which have been recommended, or measures which are being imposed by the WHO. So this is the world government which is being shaped up as part of this accord. And you can see a fund shall be established with annual contributions, including pandemic product manufacturers and voluntary contribution. So the pandemic product manufacturers contribute to this, and we know for long in the last 50, 60 years, always the guy or the organization which gives money, they control the organization. So WHO is going to be controlled by this pandemic product manufacturers because they are asking for funds for them. And then conference of parties is established, which includes countries, UN organizations, and qualified public and private sector. Qualified public and private sector. So they are going to decide who is going to be a member there. Not you and me, or not even the nations, not even the country. So non-state actors, people who are not elected, who work for their profits, who work for their benefit, they are going to be a part of this conference of parties, which decides or which runs the secretariat, which runs the decision making, which runs the entire architecture, which will be built under this accord. Now this I was coming to that architecture which they want to build. Now this is interesting because Tedros is very careful, even if the accord, because he knows during negotiation there can be various forms of the articles coming out in different forms. So he's trying to ensure parallelly there will be architecture even before the accord comes. So there are 10 proposals given by the Director General, which respond to three main pillars, that is governance, systems, and financing. And of course, they keep mentioning equity, inclusive, and coherence. But equity, equity is not the universal definition they are looking at. Equity means they are saying, okay, there is a US, there is India, which can produce vaccines, and there is Africa, they don't have capacity to understand or put anything which this the global architecture is imposing on them. So they are saying we have to be concerned about that equity, that inequity, and try to address that. It's not a universal equity where one vote, one member, that kind of equity. So under this HEPR, they want to establish a global health emergency council and a committee on health emergencies as part of the World Health Assembly. And of course, the targeted amendments which are being pushed under international health regulations, scale up universal health and preparedness reviews, and strengthen independent monitoring. That means they are going to lord over independent nations and keep asking them through reviews what you are doing. Are you doing this properly? Are you doing this in the way we want it to be done? So this kind of scale up they are going to increase. Then the strengthen global health emergency alert and response teams. So they want to constitute separate teams, which of course these teams they have defined who can be part of those teams. That means all these vaccine manufacturers or the entire the pharma industry, and their expertise that can be there, and they are going to train on common standards, interoperable, rapidly deployable, scalable, and equipped, human resources and architecture. And then, of course, strategic planning, coordination, all those things are a part of this global architecture. So these are the 10 proposals, These are the 5 proposals, and then the other 5 which we are seeing here. So as part of this, they are saying, as I mentioned, the whole of society approach is there to collaborative surveillance, community protection, clinical care, and access to countermeasures. So what are these countermeasures? We will come there. Then the financial intermediary fund. So this they proposed and it's already established. I'll come to that later. And they want to expand WHO contingency fund for emergencies to ensure this is part of the financial replenishment mechanism. Again, we'll discuss that later. So ultimately, they want to strengthen WHO at the center of global HEPR architecture. So that's again the principal objective of this global architecture. Now this is their graph, not mine. The document mentions how they want to integrate health system with animal health and agriculture, economics and finance, social welfare and protection, humanitarian and disaster management, and environment. So you can see this architecture is not just limited to health, not just limited to the pandemic. They want to link it with all the other sectors. It is multi-sectoral, and the same is reflected in the accord as well. So there are a few articles which talk about multi-sectoral approach and what WHO is going to do as part of prevention and preparedness. So those PPPR comes here. And this is the governance system again. This is their own leadership, regulation, accountability. Now you can see accountability, they say universal health and preparedness review. That means the nations are accountable to WHO. So these are going to review and say, are you prepared? Are you preventing? Are you developing the mechanisms which we have asked you to do? So that kind of accountability is being mentioned here. Now this medical countermeasures platform. So this is another. They are now creating a medical countermeasures platform, and what it means is they want to bring coherence to the current medical countermeasure landscape, which is complex and fragmented across pathogens. So, monkeypox, COVID-19, influenza, these are all fragmented. And then the tools, vaccines, therapeutics, diagnostics, and all. So they want to bring coherence by creating a platform called medical countermeasures platform. So I think this is entirely about the treatment, entirely about the solution, medical solution they want to push. And they say they want to convene a broad consultative process to bring together all relevant stakeholders. So that's about relevant stakeholders. It's not you and me, but it will be relevant stakeholders, which includes there are 5 annexes, as part of Accord. So there are 5 kinds of organizations there which are already involved in the consultative process. If anyone wants a detail, I can give you. So there they are talking again of 3 key issues: governance, operating model, and surge financing. Now the surge financing is because when there is a pandemic or a health emergency, they want to get finance immediately there. So that's a surge financing they are talking about. And that the principles, which underpin this platform is speed. They want to respond rapidly, and then they say, okay, that will be equity. That again, as I mentioned, what is equity? Inclusivity. Inclusivity again is not about universal inclusivity where everyone participates. Inclusivity is bringing them into their platform, bringing them into their kind of medical countermeasures and efficiency. So again, they have a timeline for this. So you can see it started in January 2023, and a working platform will be completed by September 2023. So a prototype is there. So they have a detailed how it will be done. Now, financial replenishment mechanism. This is again WHO feels that it does not have enough money, so they want more money. And a working group was constituted, and they are given a recommendation. So they are saying to how the money will be raised. One is they said pay more as membership fees. So 194 members of the WHO, they have already increased the membership fees, and they have already paid, as you can see 2024 25 20% increase has already happened. And second is to raise resources from a range of actors, non-state actors. Range of actors means it could be any corporation, any private entity, think tank, whoever it is. So they want to increase that budget, by 2028 or 29, and through fully flexible voluntary contributions, or at least voluntary contributions which are thematic in nature as well as sustainable and predictable. So same, as for tuberculosis, someone will give money. For monkeypox, someone will give money. So that kind of voluntary contribution they want to bring. So for the 2024-25, already $6.83 billion has been approved, and from in it, member states' contribution is 1148 million only, but then the rest of 5,685 million comes from voluntary and other contributions. So here you can see we are the member of from Germany. He said already 70% of WHO finances come from only 10 donors. So this next 2 years also, this is going to continue. So here there was a discussion between earmarked and unearmarked contribution. Earmarked is, like BMGF gives money for tuberculosis, AIDS, something they earmark. Then they say you have to spend it only in Africa or something. And unearmarked contributions, there are nil. I'll come to that, I'll show you. So, but this was discussed, and some countries were concerned that there are still earmarked contributions, and they want to get over that. But then ultimately, I think, as you have seen above, they still want to go with the non-state actors' money. So this financialization of health, the health being financialized, monetized, I think that's a concern being raised by various countries, Thailand, India. Many of them raise issues in the working group. So here you can see WHO funding mechanism from their own website. So you can see the entire voluntary contributions which are specified. These are voluntarily given, but for specific purpose. So this is maximum, and then assessed contributions is very small, and core contributions, voluntary, project in planning, PAP all these are there. So this is a major concern, specified voluntary contribution. Then funding by fund type. Like this is from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They have given entirely voluntary contributions, specified voluntary contributions. So that means BMGF has never given money untied. So they said, you do this, I'll give you money. They never have given. But then the philanthropy, the philosophy which we keep hearing is they are concerned about universal public health. But why can't they give unspecified funds? Yeah, here Gavi Alliance, I think Global Alliance for Vaccine Immunization. This is the alliance of vaccine companies. Even they have given only specified voluntary contribution. That means they are pushing their products. So this being the character of funding, I don't know how this financial replenishment mechanism will be independent of the influence by these private actors. So now we have this pandemic fund. Now this was established in 2022 in Bali, Indonesia, where G20 finance meeting was there. So in the governing board, you have World Bank, WHO, other civil society organization, and other stakeholders. I'm yet to see who are these. I am trying to look at who are these. But then this pandemic fund will be determined by a technical advisory panel chaired by WHO with leading world experts, health experts, and they are going to decide who will get the fund from this pandemic fund. So they are going to assess and make recommendations on the technical merits of proposals. So what are the technical merits? I think again it is determined by WHO, and then ensure linkages with international health regulations and global PPR architecture. I think they are going to link with the accord as well. So this pandemic fund is again an instrument of this entire power architecture which is being built for WHO. So this they are calling it a very big name, financial intermediary uh, fund for prevention, preparedness, and response. So there is a direct link. There is no ambiguity in this, and they have already raised $2 billion, which has come from 25 sovereign and philanthropic contributors, which includes our great philanthropists as well. And they have already given grants to 37 countries in 6 regions. In India, they have given for animal health security strengthening in India for pandemic preparedness and response. I have a document on that. Anyone wants, I can give you. This is basically vaccination of animals. So now we have seen that lumpy skin disease and various other diseases which are being projected, and now they want to vaccinate all the animals. So I think this project is probably a pilot project testing that. Now, who are the founding financial contributors? It includes BMGF, Rockefeller Foundation, Wellcome Trust, and then the countries include Australia, Canada, China, Germany, Indonesia, all those countries are there. India has also committed to give funds to the pandemic fund. It is also a recipient, but it is also committing to contribute to the pandemic fund. So someone has put this. So you can see how 4 tracks are being used by WHO to build its power agenda. So I'm just done with 3-4 slides. This is about Bill Gates, BMGF. Last 2022, their financial power is $67 billion, and they have given $600 million to WHO, and it is the second largest funder to WHO. And then they are giving donations to civil society organizations registered in Europe. So they are lobbying for some public policies, not just health, but different lobbies, including 70 million euros to the development of medicines. So you can see clearly the linkage with the private actors. So this is the entire. They have a staff of 1818, and their budget is all there. So Gates Foundation accounted for 45% of WHO's funding from NGOs. This is already there. Second. Anyway, they are giving money for ending malaria and neglected tropical diseases in Africa. They are funding 141 countries. This is again a breakthrough coalition they are building in Europe, and this is a graph which shows how they are interlinked, and this is part of the climate change and also health agenda which they are pushing. So again, this shows how much is going to for what from BMGF. So you can see Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovations. This is in Europe. That's the largest they are getting. Global Alliance for Tuberculosis Drug Development, the One Campaign. So there are all those contributions from BMGF in Europe to influence the epidemic preparedness. So we can see several instruments are being pushed simultaneously, and already interlinkages are inbuilt into that. So now the concern is how India is responding. Indian Parliament has not discussed it so far, and I don't think any of our members of Parliament are aware of all these things. I think we have to increase our voice. We have to hold more such webinars, and basically strengthen the sovereign decision making of India. We did a lot of campaigns with the seed, with the trade, WTO trade issues in the last 20 years. So this is a latest threat, I think, with different kinds of challenges. Recently, Parliament has approved 31 bills, and among them, at least 10 bills are linked with what is being proposed by WHO. So the Forest Conservation Data Protection Bill, Digital Health Technologies, Registration and Registration of Birth and Death Act. So all these are interlinked with this global agenda being pushed by Bill Gates, and of course the WHO as an instrument. So WHO, we see WHO, but I think behind WHO, we should see these foundations, these individuals, and these billionaires who are just pushing their business. So I'll stop here. Maybe I hope I'm within the time. Sorry.
वेरी वेल मेड पीपीटी सर। तो आप सब लोग ने देखा किस हिसाब से स्ट्रक्चर किया गया है, डब्ल्यूएचओ का भी कैसे स्ट्रक्चर किया जा रहा है। फंडिंग जो मैंने सरप्राइजिंगली देखा, क्या रफली 16-17% मेंबर स्टेट से आएगा और 84-85% प्राइवेट डोनर से आएगा। सो बेसिकली ये टोटल एक प्राइवेट फंड बन गया है। तो मेरे को नहीं लगता है क्या इंडिया इसका मेंबरशिप रहना चाहिए या इंडिया शुड सपोर्ट डब्ल्यूएचओ। So quickly going to Johan. So Johan will tell us more about history of WHO as a fraud organization, or recently one Croatian parliamentary has told them as a terrorist organization. So over to you, Johan.
थैंक यू अंबर। तो मैं हिंदी में करूँ कि इंग्लिश में करूँ? आई थिंक हिंदी में करता हूँ, बेटर रहेगा ना?
हाँ,
ओके ठीक है। ओके, सो पहली बात तो एज फार एज डब्ल्यूएचओ का हिस्ट्री कंसर्न है, तो आई वुड रिकमेंड कि सारे लोग जाके मेरा टेक्नोक्रेसी पे सेमिनार देखें। मैंने अभी यूट्यूब पे जस्ट थोड़े दिन पहले अपलोड किया है। सो उसमें 1930 से ग्लोबल एलीट्स के जो भी आउटराइट प्रेडिक्शंस है उनकी खुद की टेक्स्ट में कंसर्निंग के ये सब मल्टीलैटरल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को कैसे फ्यूचर में ग्लोबली पावर कंसोलिडेट करने के लिए यूज़ किया जाएगा, उस पर पूरा विश्लेषण है। तो इसका बराबर बैकग्राउंड क्लीन करने के लिए वो प्रेजेंटेशन बहुत ज़रूरी है। एज फार एज डब्ल्यूएचओ के जो पास्ट ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड है सिंस द टाइम इट वाज क्रिएटेड, ये बात जानना ज़रूरी है लोगों का कि डब्ल्यूएचओ की जो लैंड है, जो बिल्डिंग बनी है, उसको एक्चुअली रॉकफेलर ओन करते थे पहले, और उन्होंने डोनेट किया था डब्ल्यूएचओ को स्थापित करने के लिए। और डेविड रॉकफेलर का जो कोट है उनकी किताब मेमोइर्स में, वो वहाँ पे ओपनली कहते हैं कि ऐसा अगर इल्ज़ाम है इन पे कि वो लोग वर्ल्ड गवर्नमेंट या कंसोलिडेटेड पावर बनाने के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, तो वो गिल्टी है और वो उसके लिए गर्व महसूस करता है। सो डब्ल्यूएचओ ऑलवेज लाइक शुरुआत से ही, अगर हम वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 को स्टडी करें, अगर हम इंटरनेशनल बैंकिंग एलिट को स्टडी करें, तो उन्होंने सारी साइट्स को फंड करके फॉल्स फ्लैग अटैक्स करके वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 को क्रिएट किया। उसके बाद यूएन, डब्ल्यूएचओ, आईएमएफ, वर्ल्ड बैंक, ब्रेटन वुड्स पूरा सिस्टम आया, और तब से काउंसिल ऑन फॉरेन रिलेशंस उसको स्टीयर कर रहा था। बाद में यूएन आया, यूएन की सारी फाउंडिंग में भी सीएफआर के मेंबर्स थे। तो ये सब ग्लोबलिस्ट बॉडीज़ का यूएन और ये सारे मल्टीलैटरल एजेंसीज जो आज के टाइम में हमें दिख रहा है कि पावर कंसोलिडेट कर रहे हैं, वो लास्ट सेंचुरी से इस पे काम कर रहे हैं, ताकि फिर जब ये समय आएगा तब वो लोग इसको बराबर से यूज़ करके अपनी पावर को कंसोलिडेट कर सकते हैं। तो वो बैकग्राउंड समझना ज़रूरी है इसका। आई विल वॉक यू ऑल थ्रू अभी के टाइम में जो आईएचआर और पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी के मेन कंसर्न्स है, उस पर मैंने कुछ पॉइंट्स कलेक्ट किए हैं। पहले मैं उसका हम लोग समरी देख लेते हैं, उसके बाद डब्ल्यूएचओ के थोड़े शेडी एक्टिविटीज़ है पास्ट के कंसर्निंग उनका टबैको पे क्या स्टैंस रहा है। फुकुशिमा में जब न्यूक्लियर प्लांट का एक्सप्लोजन हुआ, तब उन्होंने कैसे न्यूक्लियर इंडस्ट्री के लिए न्यूक्लियर इंडस्ट्री की साइड ली, जैसे कि वो वैक्सीन इंडस्ट्री की साइड ले रहे हैं अभी। ओपियोइड्स करके डेडली ड्रग्स आते हैं, उसका पूरा एडिक्शन का क्राइसिस बन गया अमेरिका में, उसके क्या डब्ल्यूएचओ का रोल था। और स्वाइन फ्लू, इबोला, ये सारी चीज़ों में डब्ल्यूएचओ का करप्शन, फ्रॉड काफ़ी सालों से इन्वॉल्व रहा है। बट पहले हम लोग थोड़े मेन पॉइंट से चालू करते हैं, अभी के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में क्या चल रहा है। पहली बात तो जस्ट टॉप ऑफ माई हेड में कह दूं कि आदर पूनावाला खुद पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी के ड्राफ्टिंग और नेगोशिएशंस में इन्वॉल्व रहे। आप अगर खाली आदर पूनावाला पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी सर्च करोगे तो लास्ट ईयर से वो मतलब डावोस में जब वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम की मीटिंग के लिए गए थे, तो वहाँ पे बोल रहे थे कि पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी बहुत ज़रूरी है। फिर मुझे थोड़े और स्टेटमेंट्स मिले दूसरे वैक्सीन मैन्युफैक्चरर्स से। एक हेड है जो कि डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज़ की वैक्सीन मैन्युफैक्चरर्स को कोऑर्डिनेट करता है, तो वो भी राजेंद्र सूरी नाम है उसका, सीईओ ऑफ डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज वैक्सीन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग नेटवर्क। तो वो भी बोल रहा था कि कैसे पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी वैक्सीन मैन्युफैक्चरर्स को बेनिफिट करेगा। आदर का भी सेम लाइन है, नैरेटिव है कि ग्लोबल बेसिकली वैक्सीन पासपोर्ट्स के लिए पैंडेमिक ज़रूरी है और दूसरी चीज़ों के लिए। तो हम देख रहे हैं कि ऑलरेडी लास्ट 2-3 साल से वैक्सीन मैन्युफैक्चरर्स इन्वॉल्व है। आदर को तो आप जानते ही हो, लाइक इनका रोल क्या है अभी जो भी चल रहा है कोर्ट में विद रिस्पेक्ट टू दैट। बट ये लोग फंडामेंटली इन्वॉल्व है इस पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी को पुश करने के लिए, आईएचआर के अमेंडमेंट्स को पुश करने के लिए, और इससे इनको ही फायदा होगा जब हम देखेंगे कि उसमें क्या एग्जैक्टली इनको पावर मिल रहा है, किस तरीके से अमेंडमेंट्स किए गए हैं। तब लाइक ज़्यादा लोगों को जानना चाहिए कि कैसे डब्ल्यूएचओ पावर ग्रैब करने के लिए ये सब कर रहा है। ओके, तो पहली बात आईएचआर पे थोड़ा हम लोग डिस्कशन करते हैं। तो आईएचआर के आर्टिकल 1 में नॉन बाइंडिंग वर्ड निकाल दिया उन लोग ने। तो नॉन बाइंडिंग वर्ड निकाल दिया मतलब डब्ल्यूएचओ का जो भी रिकमेंडेशन रहेगा वो मेंबर स्टेट्स पे बाइंडिंग रहेगा। आईएचआर एक्चुअली सार्स लाइक 2002-2003 में सार्स का जब इंसिडेंट हुआ उसके बाद आईएचआर में 2005 में अमेंडमेंट्स आए। उसमें खाली कंट्रीज को इतना ही बाइंडिंग था कि जब भी कुछ इंसिडेंट होता है ऐसा कंसर्निंग इन्फेक्शियस डिजीज तो डब्ल्यूएचओ को रिपोर्ट करना पड़ता है, लाइक मोर और लेस उतना ही था। अभी वो लोग आईएचआर को अमेंडमेंट्स करके बहुत सारी चीज़ें घुसाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं और ये सब नेक्स्ट ईयर में ये लोग फाइनलाइज करना चाहते हैं, आई थिंक बाय मे ऑफ नेक्स्ट ईयर। तो हमारे पास समय कम है, बट समझ लेते पहले कि मेन इश्यूज क्या है। दिस इज़ वन, नॉन बाइंडिंग वर्ड निकाल दिया है। दूसरा है उसके आर्टिकल 2 में ये कहता है पर्पस एंड स्कोप ऑफ दिस रेगुलेशंस आर टू प्रिवेंट, प्रोटेक्ट अगेंस्ट, प्रिपेयर, कंट्रोल एंड प्रोवाइड पब्लिक हेल्थ रिस्पॉन्स to international spread of diseases, including through health systems readiness and resilience in ways that are commensurate with and restricted to public health risks. All risks with a potential to impact public health and which avoid unnecessary interference with livelihoods, human rights, equitable access to health products and healthcare technologies and know-how. So ये पूरा डब्ल्यूएचओ के लिए दरवाज़ा खोल देता है कोई भी बहाने से टेक ओवर करने का। असली पब्लिक हेल्थ थ्रेट का भी ज़रूरत नहीं है, पोटेंशियल भी रहेगा, कोई रिस्क रहेगा पब्लिक हेल्थ को इम्पैक्ट करने के लिए तो भी ये लोग आके इंटरवीन कर सकते हैं। ये आर्टिकल 2 में उन लोग ने डाला है। तो पोटेंशियल, अनप्रूवन, सस्पेक्टेड थ्रेट, ये सब अगर कोई स्कैर आ गया किसी चीज़ का तो भी ये लोग पावर ग्रैब कर सकते हैं। ये सब आईएचआर के आर्टिकल 2 में है। फिर आर्टिकल 3 में इन लोग ने जो पहले लिखा था रिस्पेक्ट फॉर डिग्निटी, ह्यूमन राइट्स एंड फंडामेंटल फ्रीडम्स ऑफ पर्संस, इसको स्ट्राइक आउट कर दिया है। तो पहले इसमें लिखा था इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ दिस रेगुलेशंस शैल बी विद फुल रिस्पेक्ट फॉर डिग्निटी, ह्यूमन राइट्स एंड फंडामेंटल फ्रीडम्स ऑफ पर्संस बेस्ड ऑन प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ इक्विटी, बाकी जो भी है। तो ये पूरा जो भी रिस्पेक्ट था, डिग्निटी, ह्यूमन राइट्स, फंडामेंटल फ्रीडम्स व्यक्ति का, उसको निकाल दिया पूरा। तो बॉडली ऑटोनॉमी मतलब शरीर स्वतंत्रता, पर्सनल चॉइस, ये सब को हटा दिया। मतलब अभी उसमें अभी मैंडेट देंगे ये लोग तो फिर बिकॉज इनके आर्टिकल में इन लोग ने ह्यूमन राइट्स, फंडामेंटल राइट्स इंडिविजुअल्स का निकाल दिया है तो फिर ये लोग आसानी से वैक्सीन मैंडेट भी कर सकते हैं, ये इसका इम्प्लीकेशन बनता है। फिर आर्टिकल 10 में इफ स्टेट पार्टी डज नॉट एक्सेप्ट ऑफर ऑफ कोलैबोरेशन विद इन 48 आवर्स, WHO shall, when justified by magnitude of public health, immediately share with other state parties information available, while encouraging state parties to accept the offer of collaboration by WHO. तो अगर WHO ने सस्पेक्ट किया कि आउटब्रेक नेशन में इंटरनेशनल थ्रेट बनने वाला है, बट जो देश है वो WHO के साथ कोलैबोरेट नहीं करना चाहता, तो WHO बाकी दूसरे देशों को बोलेगा थ्रेट के बारे में और प्रेशर डालेगा जो भी देश कोऑपरेट नहीं कर रहा उनके साथ। तो ग्लोबली एक टाइप का प्रेशर बनेगा देश में। मतलब अगर कोई सोचो कि कोई देश में कुछ हुआ और वहाँ पे तांजानिया को उदाहरण ले लो, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल सोचो कि उनके प्रेसिडेंट को तो लोग ने मार दिया, बट अगर वो अभी जिंदा होता और उन्होंने तो ओपनली पीसीआर टेस्ट के अगेंस्ट अवेयरनेस फैलाया था, लाइक वो पानी का सैंपल देके, फ्रूट का सैंपल देके कि इसमें भी पॉजिटिव आ रहा है। तो अगर सोचो कि वहाँ पे कोई टेस्ट करके पॉजिटिव आता और वो प्रेसिडेंट ऐसे बोल रहा है कि नहीं टेस्ट रिलायबल नहीं है तो हम पैंडेमिक डिक्लेयर नहीं करेंगे, तो फिर WHO वो इन्फॉर्मेशन को लेके बाकी देशों से प्रेशर डाल सकता है उन पे। ये सब आईएचआर के अमेंडमेंट्स में डाला गया है। तो जो भी देश ऐसे जिनका प्रधानमंत्री ऐसे लोगों के साथ है और ये सब षड्यंत्र के साथ जाना नहीं चाहता, ये अमेंडमेंट्स उसको भी निकाल देते हैं। फिर जो डायरेक्टर जनरल है WHO का, वो उसको पावर जाएगा कि कोई भी सस्पेशन पे वो एक्ट कर सकता है। तो ये आर्टिकल 12 में इन लोग ने पोटेंशियल और एक्चुअल शब्द डाला है। मतलब यहाँ पे ऐसे लिखा है आर्टिकल 12 में, अगर डायरेक्टर जनरल कंसिडर करता है बेस्ड ऑन असेसमेंट के पोटेंशियल और एक्चुअल पब्लिक हेल्थ इमरजेंसी है, PHEIC जैसे नरसिम्हा जी बोल रहे थे, तो डायरेक्टर जनरल नोटिफाई कर देगा सारे स्टेट पार्टीज को एंड कंसल्टेशन चालू कर देगा उसके बारे में। तो पोटेंशियल वर्ड अभी काफ़ी खतरनाक है और एक्चुअली तो हम देखने जाए तो एक्चुअल थ्रेट भी जिस आधार पे ये लोग ले रहे हैं, हम लोग जानते हैं कि पूरे ये कोविड के टाइम में किस तरीके से पीसीआर की सीटी साइकिल्स को ज्यादा तरीके से चलाया गया था, तो ज्यादा फॉल्स पॉजिटिव आ रहे थे। उसमें हम लोग ने पेपर भी डाला था, मैंने नवंबर ने, कि सीटी साइकिल अगर 25 के नीचे करते हैं तो 90% पॉजिटिव केसेस तो निकल जाते हैं, 90 से भी ज़्यादा। तो डब्ल्यूएचओ ने बाद में रिकॉग्नाइज भी किया उसको, पर 1 साल के बाद बहुत लेट उन्होंने बोला कि सीटी साइकिल से केसेस पे फर्क पड़ता है। तो एक्चुअल केसेस भी किस आधार पर डिक्लेयर कर रहे हैं उसमें भी दिक्कत है। पोटेंशियल देखने जाएंगे तो खाली इनको कुछ लग रहा है कि बीमारी फैल रही है, उसके बेसिस पे ही, स्कैर के बेसिस पे ही ये लोग एक्ट कर सकते हैं, ये पावर जाता है उनको। फिर उसमें काफ़ी नए आर्टिकल्स भी ऐड किए गए हैं, उसमें डिटेल बहुत सारा है, आई डोंट वांट टू बोर यू गाइस। तो ये सब आर्टिकल्स किसी को चाहिए रहेंगे तो मेरे साथ पूछ लेना, मतलब मैं पब्लिकली भी शेयर कर दूंगा, probably I'll make some videos on this as well. There are some more points concerning IHR. IHR basically WHO को पावर देता है पब्लिक हेल्थ इमरजेंसी डिक्लेयर करने का, और इसमें फिर WHO को यूनिलैटरल पावर मिलेगा सारे डिसीजंस बनाने के लिए। इसमें IHR में सबसे कंसर्निंग बात क्या है कि पूरा वन हेल्थ का इनका जो इनिशिएटिव है उसको घुसाया गया है। अभी इसके क्या मतलब हमारी ज़िंदगी पे कैसे इसका इफेक्ट पड़ेगा, ये वन हेल्थ इनिशिएटिव बेसिकली IHR की ट्रीटी में उन लोग ने लीगली घुसाया है। और अभी सोचो कि वन हेल्थ में बेसिकली ये लोग क्या कह रहे हैं कि नॉट जस्ट इन्फेक्शियस डिजीज, मतलब नॉट जस्ट कि कोई बीमारी फैल रही है, बट ऐसे अलग अलग चीज़ है जो कि हेल्थ को इम्पैक्ट कर सकती है, उस पर भी फिर WHO को हक मिल जाता है इम्पैक्ट करने का। अभी इसमें IHR वन हेल्थ का पूरा डायग्राम है, थोड़ा स्क्रीन शेयर करके आपको बता देता हूँ यहाँ पे। ये इनका वन हेल्थ का पूरा मतलब इन्होंने इस तरीके से सेट किया है। एक सेकेंड जस्ट, यस, तो आप देख सकते हैं यहाँ पे डाइट, फूड सिक्योरिटी, एंटी माइक्रोबियल्स, एंटीबायोटिक्स, इंटेंसिव लाइफ स्टॉक, डिजीज वेक्टर्स, बायोडाइवर्सिटी लॉस, एयर पोल्यूशन, वाटर पोल्यूशन, क्लाइमेट चेंज, ये सारी चीज़ों को वन हेल्थ के इसमें डाला गया है। ओके, उसमें उनका नैरेटिव क्या है कि सारी चीज़ें इंटरडिपेंडेंट है, मतलब जानवरों में कुछ होगा तो फिर वो इंसानों में फैलेगा, तो डाइट भी मैटर करता है इसमें। फिर क्लाइमेट अगर बदलेगा तो ज़्यादा इन्फेक्शन होने का रिस्क बन जाएगा, तो फिर क्लाइमेट के नाम पे भी ये लोग हेल्थ के क्षेत्र में इंटरवीन कर सकते हैं। ओके, तो अभी मैं इसके आपको प्रैक्टिकल इम्प्लीकेशंस क्या है वो समझाता हूँ। अभी सोचो कि ये वन हेल्थ के अंदर WHO को पावर मिल जाता है कि क्लाइमेट के नाम पे हेल्थ इमरजेंसी डिक्लेयर कर दे और फिर क्लाइमेट लॉकडाउन इम्प्लीमेंट कर दे। ये सारी पावर इनको IHR के अमेंडमेंट्स अगर पास हो गए नेक्स्ट साल तक तो उनको पावर मिल जाएगा। तो ये लोग रिस्ट्रिक्ट कर पाएंगे लोकल इंटरनेशनल ट्रैवल, पर्यावरण के बहाना देके या ह्यूमन हेल्थ का बहाना देके। वैक्सीन पासपोर्ट्स का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में अभी काफ़ी डेवलपमेंट्स हुई है, उस पर मैं आता हूँ। अभी रिसेंटली अभी बात कर लेते हैं उसके बारे में। तो अभी रिसेंटली WHO ने डिजिटल हेल्थ पार्टनरशिप का इनिशिएटिव लॉन्च किया यूरोप के साथ। तो अभी ये लास्ट 2 महीने पहले ही हुआ है, जून 5 को WHO और यूरोपियन कमीशन ने अनाउंस किया कि डिजिटल हेल्थ इनिशिएटिव वो लोग लॉन्च कर रहे हैं ग्लोबल कोविड-19 वैक्सीन सर्टिफिकेट का सिस्टम बनाने के लिए। और ये वैक्सीन पासपोर्ट सिस्टम को एक्सपैंड किया जाएगा ग्लोबल डिजिटल हेल्थ सर्टिफिकेशन नेटवर्क में, और ये सब WHO चलाएगा। WHO के मेंबर्स ने अराउंड $7 बिलियन की बजट एलोकेट की है इसके लिए। और बेसिकली अगर ये पास होता है तो फिर पूरा जो ग्लोबली ये डिजिटल पासपोर्ट्स का जिस तरीके से ये लोग नया पैंडेमिक ला के सबको वैक्सीन देना चाहते हैं, तो वो बहुत इनके लिए आसान हो जाएगा। और ये सारे कंट्रीज में इसको इंटीग्रेट करना चाहते हैं, मतलब भारत का सर्टिफिकेट दूसरे देशों में चलेगा, वो सबको एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे लाना चाहते हैं। ठीक है, और इसके हम क्या नुकसान है जानते हैं। अगर ये लोग ऐसा सिस्टम लेके आते हैं तो फिर ये लोग जब भी ऐसी कोई समस्या लाते रहेंगे तो हम लोग इनका अगर सर्टिफिकेट अपडेट नहीं करेंगे ये ऐप में, जो ये लोग उसका पूरा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बना रहे हैं, तो फिर हमारा ट्रैवल और एंट्री रुक जाएगा दूसरे जगहों में। तो अभी इसका फॉर्मली इन लोग ने लॉन्च किया है 2 महीने पहले ही। WHO और यूरोपियन कमीशन ने प्लेटफॉर्म लॉन्च किया, इसके लिए $7 बिलियन भी एलोकेट किए गए हैं। फिर वन हेल्थ को फाइनेंस कौन कर रहा है? ये पूरा जो वन हेल्थ का इनिशिएटिव है, इसमें अगर हम देखेंगे तो ये सारे नोटोरियस कैरेक्टर्स आ जाते हैं। तो UN, यूरोपियन यूनियन, बिल एंड मेलिंडा गेट्स फाउंडेशन, गावी, वेलकम ट्रस्ट, सेपी, वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम, वर्ल्ड बैंक। अभी ये सब कैरेक्टर्स जिन्होंने पूरा कोविड का षड्यंत्र के पीछे ये सब लोग इन्वॉल्व थे, वही पूरा वन हेल्थ का इनिशिएटिव भी फाइनेंस कर रहे हैं। और ये वन हेल्थ बहुत ही खतरनाक है, उसको IHR के आर्टिकल्स में लोग ने लीगली भी घुसा दिया है। तो अगर ये पास होता है तो फिर पूरा मतलब कोई भी बहाने पे ये लोग कर सकते हैं, नॉट जस्ट के पीसीआर टेस्ट पॉजिटिव आया तो करेंगे, बट क्लाइमेट के नाम पे या खाने के नाम पे, जानवरों को कंट्रोल करने के नाम पे ये सारी चीजें की जा सकती है। पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी में एक और मतलब जरूरी चीज की गई है कि ह्यूमन राइट्स को निकाल दिया। ओके, तो आईएचआर के अमेंडमेंट में मैंने बोला ये पूरा स्ट्राइक थ्रू कर दिया इन लोग ने। तो ये सब मेन चेंजेस है जो भी आईएचआर में किए गए हैं, जिसका इम्पैक्ट पड़ेगा लोगों को, तो इसका लोगों को जानना जरूरी है। तो ये सब मेन पॉइंट्स है। बाकी अभी कुछ डेवलपमेंट्स चल रही है इंटरनेशनली, जिस तरीके से हम समझ सकते हैं कि डब्ल्यूएचओ मतलब किस दिशा में जा रहा है। अभी ट्विटर पे मस्क ने भी आई थिंक ट्वीट किया था कि देशों को अपनी सॉवरेंटी नहीं देनी चाहिए डब्ल्यूएचओ को। तो डब्ल्यूएचओ ने एक्चुअली वार्निंग दिया कि वो फेक न्यूज़ है। ठीक है, और ये फेक न्यूज़ किस किस बेसिस पे बोल रहे हैं ये लोग कि नहीं देश ही डिसाइड कर रहे हैं कि क्या अकॉर्ड रहेगा, तो फिर ऐसे बोलना कि देश सॉवरेंटी दे रहे हैं वो गलत है। अभी मैं भी इस पे कुछ नेगोशिएशंस के वीडियोस देख रहा था अभी, यूके में और यूएस में काफी ऐसे अवेयर लोग हैं जो कि उनके जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स हैं जो ये पैंडेमिक के नेगोशिएशन में इन्वॉल्व है, उनके साथ मीटिंग्स करके बात कर रहे हैं। और उनका ओपिनियन यह है कि बाकी जो भी डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज छोटे देशों से इनपुट्स आ रहे हैं वो उनको बहुत सीरियसली नहीं ले रहे। मेनली ये जो मेन कंट्रीज है उनके ही, और ये डब्ल्यूएचओ के जो फंडर्स है उनका ही घुस रहा है, और बाकी ये जो छोटे मोटे देश है उनका नहीं घुस रहा। वो सब वीडियोस की लिंक मैं आपके साथ शेयर कर सकता हूँ। तो ये सब वहाँ पे एक देशों में अवेयरनेस ज़्यादा है। यूके में एक्चुअली 1.5 लाख लोगों ने पिटिशन साइन किया कि यूके की गवर्नमेंट को ये ट्रीटी पे ऐसे कोई साइन नहीं करना चाहिए जिससे कि पार्लियामेंट से पावर निकल के डब्ल्यूएचओ के पास चले जाए। उसके बाद एंड्रू बिजन नाम का पॉलिटिशियन है, उसने यूके की पार्लियामेंट में फिर इसके बारे में अवेयरनेस फैलाया और बाकी पार्लियामेंटेरियंस को भी अर्ज कर रहे थे कि इस पे साइन नहीं करना चाहिए बिकॉज उसके इम्प्लीकेशंस मतलब खतरनाक है। भारत में हम देखने जाए तो हमारा जो हेल्थ मिनिस्टर है सॉरी हमारी भारती पवार, तो वो भी कह रही है कि वन हेल्थ के फ्रेमवर्क के अंदर सर्वेलेंस सिस्टम स्ट्रेंथन होने चाहिए। तो हमारे खुद के जो भी लोकल पॉलिटिशियंस हैं, अभी राजेश भूषण ने भी रिसेंटली आके बोला था कि अगला पैंडेमिक आएगा। और मेरे मतलब इन्वेस्टिगेटर काम में मैंने समझाया है पहले कि भारत का पूरा सिस्टम कैसे कैप्चर हो गया है, पीएचएफआई, गेट फाउंडेशन, रॉकफेलर फाउंडेशन, ये सब के द्वारा। तो ये सब वन हेल्थ के कॉल्स भी अभी दिए जा रहे हैं। G20 में भी सिमिलर चीज़ें बोल रहे थे लोग, तो मतलब वो सब चीज़ पे ट्रैक रखना ज़रूरी है। आईएचआर के अमेंडमेंट से मेनली मैंने जैसे बोला वन हेल्थ का पूरा आ जाता है, और हेल्थ सर्वेलेंस, रिपोर्टिंग, मैनेजमेंट, ये सब चीज़ें उसमें आ जाती है। जहाँ तक ट्रीटी की बात है तो फिर डब्ल्यूएचओ को पूरा पावर चले जाएगा वैक्सीन पासपोर्ट्स, डिजिटल आईडीज के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन का, वैक्सीन मैंडेट्स का, ट्रैवल रिस्ट्रिक्शन, स्टैंडर्डाइज मेडिकल प्रोसीजर्स, ये सारी चीज़ें अगर ट्रीटी पास होती है तो उसमें डब्ल्यूएचओ को लीगली ये सब चीज़ का पावर मिल जाएगा। और मेन पावर डायरेक्टर जनरल के पास यही रहेगा कि पैंडेमिक कब एंड करना है। जब तक डब्ल्यूएचओ नहीं बोलेगा तब तक हो नहीं पाएगा वो लीगली। तो अगर टेड्रोस को चाहिए या जो भी डब्ल्यूएचओ डायरेक्टर जनरल बदलेगा आगे, उसको चाहिए कि ये चलते रहे, तो पूरा उनके ऊपर लीगली अथॉरिटी चले जाता है। ओके, फिर लेट्स सी, अभी हम लोग थोड़ा डब्ल्यूएचओ के पास्ट के बारे में बात करते हैं, बिकॉज ये तो करंट डेवलपमेंट्स हो गई, और मोटा मोटा यही पॉइंट्स है जो आई फील सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है और कंसर्निंग रहने चाहिए। डब्ल्यूएचओ के एम्प्लॉयज़ को कोई भी मतलब टैक्सेस से वो लोग एग्जेम्प्ट है, और उनको डिप्लोमेटिक इम्यूनिटी है। मतलब उनको हम ऐसे सू नहीं कर सकते, कोर्ट में लेके जा नहीं सकते, बिकॉज उनको डिप्लोमेटिक इम्यूनिटी दी गई है। उसकी लीगल डिटेल्स पे अगर कोई मतलब ऑफकोर्स ये सब चीज़ें चैलेंज हो सकती है, बट एज ऑफ नाउ उनको डिप्लोमेटिक इम्यूनिटी है। हम लोग जानते हैं डब्ल्यूएचओ का सेकेंड लार्जेस्ट डोनर गेट्स है और 5th लार्जेस्ट डोनर गावी है, तो मोस्ट फंडिंग भी वहाँ से जा रहा है। अभी जहाँ तक इनके पास्ट एक्टिविटीज की बात है तो पहले हम थोड़ा कोविड से चालू करते हैं और फिर हम लोग इतिहास में जाते हैं। मेन जो रिकमेंडेशन थे डब्ल्यूएचओ के ये पूरे टाइम में, उनका मास्क उन्होंने मतलब एक अभी अच्छी चीज़ भी है बुरी चीज़ भी है मास्क के बारे में। उनका डॉक्यूमेंट हम लोग यूज़ करते थे ये बताने के लिए कि मतलब मास्क पे ठोस गोल्ड स्टैंडर्ड सबूत नहीं है कंट्रोल ट्रायल्स का कि ये इन्फेक्शन को रोकते हैं। बट तो भी डब्ल्यूएचओ ने रिकमेंडेशन दी थी दूसरे बहानों के और रीजंस के नाम पे, इवन तो डायरेक्ट एविडेंस नहीं था, बट जो भी उनका बाकी कारण थे कि मतलब लोगों को कंप्लायंस बढ़ाना चाहिए, ऐसा ऐसा पैंडेमिक से लोगों को सीरियसली लेना चाहिए, उनके दूसरे भी बिहेवियरल मॉडिफिकेशन के नाम पे बहाने थे, वो सब उनके डॉक्यूमेंट पे मेजर करके उन्होंने रेकमेंड किया था। बट एटलीस्ट एक अच्छी बात थी कि उन्होंने इतना तो बोला था कि इस पे डायरेक्ट सबूत नहीं है, तो वो सब हम लोग ने यूज किया था। उन्होंने हर्ड इम्यूनिटी का डेफिनेशन चेंज कर दिया, वो आई थिंक सबसे मेन बात है कि पहले उनका हर्ड इम्यूनिटी का डेफिनेशन वेबसाइट पे ये इंक्लूड करता था कि वैक्सीन से भी आ सकता है, नेचुरल इन्फेक्शन से भी आ सकता है। बाद में उन्होंने नेचुरल इन्फेक्शन वाला हटा दिया, फिर उन पे प्रेशर बना तो वापस उनको डालना पड़ा। ठीक है, तो ये टाइप की एक्टिविटीज है। तीसरा है कि ये पूरे पैंडेमिक के टाइम में काफी लोगों को वेंटिलेटर पे डाला गया, जिससे काफी लोगों की नीडलेसली मौत हुई कंपेयर टू अगर उनको अर्ली ट्रीटमेंट दिया जाता, आइवरमेक्टिन, हाइड्रोक्सीक्लोरोक्विन, दूसरी काफी सारे ऑल्टरनेटिव ट्रीटमेंट्स है। तो उसके बदले डब्ल्यूएचओ ने रिकमेंडेशन दिया था कि मैकेनिकल वेंटिलेटर पे लोगों को डालना चाहिए, इससे काफी लोगों की अननेसेसरली मौत हुई है। कि तो ये रिकमेंडेशन भी डब्ल्यूएचओ के द्वारा ही आया पूरे पैंडेमिक के षड्यंत्र में। जहाँ तक वर्ल्ड हेल्थ असेंबली की बात है, तो नेक्स्ट ईयर जो लाइक मई 2024 में ये सब चीज़ें अप्रूव होगी, तो वो ये वर्ल्ड हेल्थ असेंबली में ही होगी। उसका पहले क्या था कि डब्ल्यूएचओ ही मतलब मेंबर स्टेट्स उसको स्पॉन्सर करते थे। थोड़े साल के बाद फार्मास्यूटिकल जायंट्स वो ऑर्गेनाइज करने लगे, तो मर्क, फाइजर, ये सब ही वर्ल्ड हेल्थ असेंबली की मीटिंग्स ऑर्गेनाइज करने लगे। ठीक है, तो उनका इन्फ्लुएंस, फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनीज का इन्फ्लुएंस, रॉकफेलर्स का इन्फ्लुएंस, गेट्स, बाकी अनेक सारी बॉडीज है जो कि डब्ल्यूएचओ को फंडिंग और इस तरीके से इन्फ्लुएंस करती है। उनकी अगर पास्ट में हम देखेंगे तो थोड़े पॉइंट्स है। टबैको इंडस्ट्री को लेके काफी लोग जो तंबाकू की इंडस्ट्री में काम करते थे वो एक्चुअली में डब्ल्यूएचओ को एडवाइस कर रहे थे, और डब्ल्यूएचओ को पता था, और इस पे पहले से स्टडीज भी थी कि टबैको की वजह से लंग्स खराब हो रहे हैं, डैमेज हो रहे हैं, लंग कैंसर हो रहा है। तो भी डब्ल्यूएचओ ऐसे लोगों को से एडवाइस दे रहा था जो कि टबैको इंडस्ट्री के लिए काम कर रहे थे, और डब्ल्यूएचओ इतना ठोस नहीं था। मतलब इस पे पूरा यूएस कांग्रेस में भी इंक्वायरीज हुई थी, और ये पता चला था कि डब्ल्यूएचओ बहुत ही सॉफ्ट जा रहा था टबैको इंडस्ट्री के अगेंस्ट, और टबैको इंडस्ट्री ने पूरा ऐसे टूल किट बनाया था कि डब्ल्यूएचओ को कैसे सबवर्ट करना है, और डब्ल्यूएचओ भी उसमें कंप्लाई कर रहा था। एक अमेरिकन लॉयर था पॉल डीट्रिक, जो कि टबैको जायंट के लिए काम कर रहा था, फिलिप मॉरिसन, और वो डब्ल्यूएचओ की रीजनल ऑफिस में काम करता था। तो ऐसे अगर हम लोग कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट के बारे में देखने जाएंगे तो टबैको इंडस्ट्री ले लो, ओपियोइड्स जो मतलब पेन सप्रेस करते हैं, न्यूक्लियर इंडस्ट्री है, ऐसी काफी सारी चीजें हैं। पहले लाइक स्वाइन फ्लू का भी अगर हम स्कैर देखेंगे तो कॉमन टैक्टिक दिखती है कि जो इंडस्ट्री के लिए काम करते हैं वो फिर डब्ल्यूएचओ को इधर वहां पे काम कर रहे हैं या फाइनेंस कर रहे हैं, उसकी वजह से डब्ल्यूएचओ की पॉलिसी बदल जाती है उनके फेवर में। ओके, तो ये रहा टबैको इंडस्ट्री का। डब्ल्यूएचओ को कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं था, टबैको इंडस्ट्री के मेंबर्स उनको एडवाइस कर रहे थे इससे। एक फ्रैंक सलिवन नाम का आदमी था, उसका भी क्लियर हो गया बाद में कि ये टबैको इंडस्ट्री के लिए काम कर रहा है, तो भी डब्ल्यूएचओ ने उसको हटाया नहीं और उससे कंटिन्यूस एडवाइस लेते रहे। ऐसा बिहेवियर है डब्ल्यूएचओ का। जहाँ तक स्वाइन फ्लू की बात है 2009 में, तो काफी देशों ने एक्चुअली में फार्मा कंपनीज के साथ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट साइन करके रखे थे कि अगर डब्ल्यूएचओ लेवल 6 का पैंडेमिक डिक्लेयर करता है तो फिर वो देशों को फार्मा कंपनी से स्वाइन फ्लू का वैक्सीन लेना पड़ेगा। और फिर ये भी सबूत निकल के आया कि फिर ये सारे वैक्सीन जायंट्स डब्ल्यूएचओ के लिए काम कर रहे थे, और डब्ल्यूएचओ ने फिर पैंडेमिक लेवल 6 वाला डिक्लेयर किया, और वो सारे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ट्रिगर होके ये फार्मा कंपनीज को काफी आर्थिक मुनाफा हुआ उससे। वो उनका रोल था इस पे। बाद में इंक्वायरीज भी हुई, पेस कमेटी थी यूरोप में, वहाँ पे डब्ल्यूएचओ के अगेंस्ट पूरी इंक्वायरीज हुई, और ये पाया गया कि उन्होंने एक्चुअली फार्मा कंपनीज के साथ कल्यूड करके वो पूरा एग्जैजरेट किया था, जबकि बीमारी थी नहीं इतनी। वो लोग बहुत सारे केसेस रिपोर्ट कर रहे थे और उन्होंने टेस्ट करना बंद कर दिया था, तो भी मैथमेटिकल मॉडल के बेसिस पे केसेस बता रहे थे लोगों को डर बनाने के लिए। ये सब उनका पास्ट बिहेवियर रहा है। पैंडेमिक का डेफिनेशन चेंज कर दिया 2009 में, तो पहले उसमें डेथ्स इंक्लूड की जाती थी, बाद में केसेस पे आ गया पूरा, जिसकी वजह से और अभी उसको और भी वाटर डाउन करने वाले ये लोग, आईएचआर और पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी की अमेंडमेंट्स में। ये लोग चाहते हैं कि सस्पेक्टेड चीजें भी आ जाए, नॉट जस्ट के एक्चुअल टेस्ट के बेसिस पे। फिर जो फुकुशिमा में न्यूक्लियर पूरा जो था इंसिडेंट हुआ, उसका डेंजर उन्होंने डाउन प्ले किया। तो डब्ल्यूएचओ ने एक मतलब साइंटिस्ट थे जिन्होंने 6 और साइंटिस्ट के साथ थायराइड कैंसर के पेपर्स पब्लिश किए थे चेरनोबिल के डिजास्टर के बाद। चेरनोबिल दूसरा न्यूक्लियर डिजास्टर था जो कि फुकुशिमा के बहुत पहले हुआ। तो डब्ल्यूएचओ ने उन पर प्रेशर बनाया कि उनका पेपर विथड्रॉ करने के लिए। डब्ल्यूएचओ ने काफी जो सीरियस हेल्थ इफेक्ट्स थे बच्चों में हो रहे थे फुकुशिमा के ब्लास्ट के बाद, तो उसके बारे में बात नहीं की, उसके उनकी रिपोर्ट में मेंशन नहीं किया। फिर डब्ल्यूएचओ के हिसाब से चेरनोबिल में जो यू नो नॉर्दर्न यूरोप में जो न्यूक्लियर इंसिडेंट हुआ उसमें 50 डेथ और 4,000 कैंसर हुए थे। तो डब्ल्यूएचओ के फिगर्स हम कंपेयर करते हैं इंडिपेंडेंट साइंटिस्ट से, मतलब आज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ही देख सकते हैं कि डब्ल्यूएचओ पूरा मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन के बारे में बात कर रहा है और ऑनेस्ट साइंटिस्ट को इन्फोडेमिक और फेक न्यूज के नाम पे प्रेशर किया जा रहा है कि उनकी लाइसेंसेस निकाल देंगे, मेडिकल बोर्ड एक्शन लेगा उन पे। तो ये सेम चीजें पहले भी हो रही थी। इंडिपेंडेंट साइंटिस्ट के हिसाब से ये फिगर जो था 9,85,000 डेथ्स थी, ऑलमोस्ट 10 लाख डेथ्स ये पूरे चेरनोबिल के डिजास्टर के बाद। डब्ल्यूएचओ के हिसाब से 50 डेथ हुई थी खाली, ठीक है। और ये न्यूयॉर्क अकेडमी ऑफ साइंसेज ने पूरा वो फिगर बैठाया था जो जहाँ पे इंडिपेंडेंट साइंटिस्ट काम कर रहे थे। डब्ल्यूएचओ ने कैंसर के अलावा और कोई चीज कंसिडर ही नहीं की न्यूक्लियर रेडिएशन के इफेक्ट की वजह से। खाली कैंसर को उन्होंने माना कि कैंसर ही होता है, जैसे कि वैक्सीन के लिए लोग अभी बोल रहे हैं। तो आप देख सकते हैं पैरेलल्स कितने सारे हैं। जब न्यूक्लियर ब्लास्ट हुआ तो उन्होंने बोला नहीं उससे खाली कैंसर ही होता है, और तो भी आंकड़े बहुत कम कर दिए हैं। अभी हम वैक्सीन के साइड इफेक्ट्स हो रहे हैं उसमें भी ये लोग क्या बोल रहे हैं कि मायोकार्डाइटिस होता है बट बहुत कम होता है, वायरस का एक्चुअली जो इफेक्ट है उसका ज्यादा है मायोकार्डाइटिस से। तो आप एक बार उनका प्लेबुक और कैसे काम करते हैं ये लोग, तो फिर अलग अलग इंसिडेंट्स होते हैं उसमें सेम तरीके से आपको पैटर्न्स देखने को मिलेगी। तो ये न्यूक्लियर रेडिएशन का और वैक्सीन के साइड इफेक्ट्स का आप पैरेलल अच्छे से देख सकते हो। ओके, और जहाँ तक ओपियोइड क्राइसिस की बात है तो ओपियोइड्स ड्रग्स के काफी सारे साइड इफेक्ट्स होते हैं। तो भी डब्ल्यूएचओ एक्चुअली में ऑलमोस्ट $2 मिलियन उन्होंने लिए पर्ड्यू से, जो कि फार्मा जायंट था जो लाइक ओपियोइड ड्रग्स बना रहा था। यूएस में फिर कांग्रेशनल रिपोर्ट भी पब्लिश हुई जहाँ पे ये सिद्ध हो गया कि बहुत ही अग्रेसिव और लॉन्ग टर्म रोल प्ले किया डब्ल्यूएचओ ने फिजिशियंस को इन्फ्लुएंस करने के लिए कि वो लोग ओपियोइड्स प्रिस्क्राइब करें। तो एक साइड पे वो लोग ये ओपियोइड इंडस्ट्री से पैसा ले रहे हैं और फिर फिजिशियंस को पुश कर रहे हैं उनकी एडवाइजरीज उनकी डॉक्यूमेंट्स में कि ओपियोइड्स यूज होने चाहिए। तो डब्ल्यूएचओ का जो क्रेडिबिलिटी है सो कॉल्ड एज अ लाइक मेंबर स्टेट ड्रिवन मल्टीलैटरल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, वो जैसे कि वंदना शिवा जी बोल रही थी पहले, बहुत बहुत टाइम पहले निकल गया। एक्चुअली स्टार्टिंग से ही कॉम्प्रोमाइज था बट जितना कॉम्प्रोमाइज हुआ है बाद में उसका मतलब लेवल बढ़ गया है। जैसे कि हम देख सकते हैं लाइक पहले भी ये सारी चीजें हो रही थी, अगर हम टबैको इंडस्ट्री के बारे में देखें या ये न्यूक्लियर डिजास्टर्स के बारे में देखें या प्रीवियस पैंडेमिक्स के बारे में ही देखें, बट अभी ये नेक्स्ट लेवल पे जा रहा है और यू कैन सी कि कहाँ पे ये सब चीजें जा रही है। सो या I'm done with my talk. Thanks.
हाय, थैंक्स योहान। बहुत अच्छी तरह से काफ़ी कुछ कवर कर दिया है डब्ल्यूएचओ का आचार का। तो जस्ट 5 मिनट्स है, तो चैट्स में अगर किसी को कुछ क्वेश्चंस पूछना है तो काइंडली आप पूछ सकते हैं। यू कैन चैट, यू कैन आंसर इट हियर। और योहान आज मैं एक रिसर्च कर रहा था, कुछ एक अच्छा डॉक्यूमेंट मिला। आई डोंट थिंक अपन ने पहले डॉक्यूमेंट देखा है। इट इज आई हैड मेड इट टू यू आल्सो।
ओके,
तो हाँ, ये सितंबर 2019 में डब्ल्यूएचओ ने ये डॉक्यूमेंट निकाला था।
हाँ, इस पे हम लोग का इट इज देयर इन द पेपर वी हैड पब्लिश्ड, मे बी यू मस्ट हैव फॉरगॉटन, बट उसमें हम लोग ने लिखा था कि ये पैंडेमिक हुआ उसके पहले डब्ल्यूएचओ ने कभी लॉकडाउन रेकमेंड नहीं किए थे। आई थिंक इट इज द सेम डॉक्यूमेंट।
हाँ, सेम है, नॉट ओनली लॉकडाउन, क्वारंटाइन, ये वो कुछ भी रेकमेंड नहीं।
हम लोग ने हमारे इसमें लिखा था, पेपर जो लिखा था ना उसमें
मास्क वास्क का तो कोई उनके पास एविडेंस नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है। एवरीथिंग, एंड दिस इज जस्ट 1 मंथ बिफोर द कोविड केम, सितंबर 2019। तो सरप्राइजिंगली डब्ल्यूएचओ ने ये भी फॉलो अप नहीं किया जो उनका ही डॉक्यूमेंट है, स्पेशली ऑन वायरस इन्फ्लुएंजा। तो उसको भी उन्होंने पैंडेमिक ट्रीटी में कुछ फॉलो नहीं किया। सेकेंड थिंग, एक और मेन पॉइंट है क्या, जो डब्ल्यूएचओ बना हुआ है, द डायरेक्टर जनरल कैन नॉट टेक इंडिपेंडेंट डिसीजंस। there is a body of 20 people जिसके साथ उसको बात करके then they will tell him what to do. But ये कोविड पैंडेमिक में हमने देखा कि डायरेक्टर जनरल इज ओनली टेकिंग ऑल द डिसीजंस इंडिपेंडेंटली, तो ये भी काफी गलत हुआ. बट अभी नया आईएचआर में उन लोग डायरेक्टर जनरल को ही पूरा पावर दे रहे हैं. He will be the most powerful man there to declare pandemics and declare.
Ambar, sorry. I think two people raised hands.
Okay, just a minute. Huh?
Yeah.
Sorry, let me see. So Dr. Shaji Kudia.
Hello. Yes, good evening all. I am Dr. Shah. Yet I represent the International Forum for Promoting Homeopathy and Vice President of IFPH, International Forum for Promoting Homeopathy. I wish to bring to your attention three things. One thing is homeopathy is also need to be encouraged and utilized as one of the best solution for prevention, treatment and rehabilitation of viral infections and pandemics. And Awaken India movement should be fully aware of it and include homeopathy also in your dealings. At present, homeopathy segment is praising one of the most important threat in India. And one Dr. Suryeka B. Philip, an allopathy doctor and a homeopathy doctor who oppose homeopathy, and few others have filed a case against homeopathy in India, in Supreme Court of India. So we need a big support. We have formed a committee to oppose and file counter affidavit and also become party to the case, so that the case will be strengthened and proper presentations and proper ideas will be countered in the court. So we need the support of Awaken India movement in this regard. That is my first things to share with this August group. Second thing is, I was listening from beginning. In between I got few calls, so I was slightly interrupted, but still we discussed all these matters where WHO and we all understand these things. But how we can effectively and practically counter this is the thing very importantly we need to discuss, and I think that should be the necessity things, decisions we need to make and counter in the coming days and weeks and months, so that we will be collectively able to manage and oppose this gigantic group where we need to focus, and I think that is the area we need to focus on. That's all for the meantime. So that's all. Thank you for listening and giving opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Shaji. I'd like to address the second point as well. देखो, जैसे हमने देखा कि यूके में ऑलमोस्ट 1.5 लाख लोगों ने पिटिशन साइन किया कि यूके गवर्नमेंट को ऐसा कोई ट्रीटी साइन नहीं करना चाहिए. उसके बाद बिकॉज उनके सिंपैथेटिक पार्लियामेंटेरियंस है थोड़े, तो फिर उन्होंने पार्लियामेंट में मैटर को उठाया. तो दैट इज ओनली पॉसिबल बिकॉज वहाँ के लोगों में अवेयरनेस बहुत है, और यहाँ पे हम देखते हैं कि मतलब हमारे पास लोग बहुत कम जुड़े हैं. तो फर्स्ट स्टेप हैज टू बी कि ये जो भी थ्रेट्स है और क्या डेवलपमेंट चल रही है, जो भी पॉइंट्स हम लोग ने डिस्कस किए, वो लोगों के सामने जाए, और फिर हम लोग कोई टाइप का सिमिलर पिटिशन सेटअप करके अगर कोई पार्लियामेंटेरियंस को एंगेज करके मे बी लाइक कैन ट्राई टू गेट दिस मैटर ओवर देयर, तभी लाइक लार्जर लेवल पे हमारे जो भी मीडिया कॉन्टैक्ट्स है वहाँ पे हमें कुछ करना चाहिए. तो राइट नाउ तो हमें सबको अवेयरनेस पे ही काम करना है. एक टाइम वो होता है तो फिर हम लोग कुछ कर सकते हैं, और इन दी एंड ऑलवेज अगर ये सब पास होता भी है उसके नाम पे अगर कुछ होता है तो ऑलवेज हम लोग प्रोटेस्ट करने के लिए, नॉन कंप्लायंस के लिए वी विल ऑलवेज बी फॉलोइंग दैट अप्रोच. पूरा जो कोविड के टाइम में भी मैंडेट्स वगैरह लगे तो हम लोग किसी ने कंप्लाई नहीं किया उसके साथ. तो अवेयरनेस, नॉन कंप्लायंस और जितना हम लोग गवर्नमेंट को एंगेज कर सकते हैं जब तक ये ट्रीटी की नेगोशिएशन चल रही है, दैट शुड बी द वे फॉरवर्ड. अंबर, you have any other point?
On the first point, Dr. Shaji, you'll be glad to know one of our NSC members is Dr. Abhay Chedda. He is a homeopath. So we follow, we actually say integrative medicine or everything. इंडिया में तो सब कुछ है, आयुर्वेदा है, होम्योपैथी है, यूनानी है, नेपाली है, नेचुरोपैथी है, and that's why we actually were not affected so much by the COVID, but of course due to the vaccine we were affected.
Number
Thank
two
you.
points I want to add. One
Sure.
is the entire effort here is to counter WHO push for particular kind of treatment. So they are saying there will be a pandemic and the pandemic will be treated by the vaccines, therapeutic or whatever their menu is there. So that's where we are trying to say there are many methods. There is a diversity of treatment systems, local systems are there, local health knowledge systems are there. So that we need to push, which includes homeopathy and other methods. Second, I think the question is what we can do now. Now we need to approach our members of parliament wherever they are, ask them to start talking about this in Indian parliament because India cannot be a party to this kind of power grabbing by WHO. Maybe we are giving a call for quit, WHO. But even before, I think we need to bring Indian Parliament into this and how we can establish our own sovereignty. Even if there is a pandemic, even if there is infection, or even if there is a disease, we have the methods, we have the capacities, we have the knowledge, we have the abilities to deal with whatever we are getting. I think that message has to go through members of parliament.
Rightly said, sir. मूलचंद प्रजापति, आप अपने
Sorry,
आप को unmute करके
like,
पूछ सकते
I have to get going, so I will take your leave, guys. Thank you so much.
हैं. Sure, sure. Thanks. मूलचंद प्रजापति, अपने आप को unmute करके पूछ सकते हो.
I think he typed something in the chat. So maybe that's it. So anyone else? Sorry, number I thinking.
So let us close now. It is already 8:04. We had a very, very good webinar, and still I see 34 participants are here, and we peaked up to 55 participants. And of course, there were few who joined in our YouTube and Facebook channels also. So,
Daryl has
thank you.
raised his hand.
Okay, just a minute. Daryl, you can ask your question. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Yes, thank you, Amarji. Good evening, Dr. Narasimha and everyone. Also, so I'm addressing Dr. Shaji's question also about, the main thing is that what can we do about this? All the speakers today have told us about, how powerful WHR and what is being done in the different treaties, the amendments and all of that. So the first thing that I wanted to share is that we first need to discredit WHO, with all the means like we can do. Because here, even the government, they are just projecting that WHO is like a mantra. When we already know in India, and we've also put out documents, this press conference also that we'll be doing. We've put out, 11 medical frauds that WHO has committed. Actually, in that, there are 13 when I looked in more detail. So across India, at least, maybe we don't have international pull, but we can put our videos outside also. In India, I think the main thing is to discredit WHO and take some legal steps against it. And the second is what Dr. Narasimha was also saying, that we have to act in the capacity of our own sovereignty. And that is also one of our proposals in our press conference. So all of tomorrow morning, this is just for everybody who's listening today. Tomorrow morning, please join us on Kaam Ki Baat at 11 a.m. on our AIM Telegram channel, the discussion group. So over there, I will be explaining what we can do through these press conferences, especially on 9th of August, where it has been planned across different states in India and different cities. So tomorrow in detail, I will explain those, steps that we can do. And I think these are the two foundations in terms of our response. First is discrediting WHO completely, making it very clear to our ministers, health minister, prime minister, and as much as public as we can reach to in India, that they are a criminal organization, just like that other country has already declared. So that is knowledge which only we have to take it to the masses and take it to the authorities. And on that basis, once we are able to, shove it in their faces every day and make it obvious, then we have the proper right to say, now we don't need to listen to anything about WHO and their proposals. And we are making counter proposals, and we are making our own teams and committees and health programs. It's just this whole game is just a power play. Now their power play is so much on the internet in terms of policies and through government channels, and our power play has to be on the streets through people and through credible, doctors, healers, therapists who are along with us. We have to take the public along. So that's what I would like to say is, the part of the solution. Thank you, Amber.
Yeah, thanks. We have Mr. Thampi Nagarajan here. Mr. Thampi, yes, you can ask a question.
Yeah, Om Namah Shivaya, Amberji.
Om Namah Shivaya.
First of all, I am pleading for the support for the IFPH in the Supreme Court case because they want to eliminate homeopathy from India. That is the intention of the IMA and the allopathy. So they are paying an indirect crooked way through the WHO. Second, as I told very first, the WHO Quit India movement, we should have it strong, as Daryl told, by exposing their this fraudulence to the public, because the MBs are mainly concentrating on their power politics. So even we can't trust them, but at least we should make them aware. Thank you. Very good, excellent presentation was there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Dr. Narasimha, we close down. There's no more questions now.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for preparing that beautiful PPT. And if you share it with us, then we will share it in all our platforms for people to go through it. And thank you all for connecting and listening to it. Again, मैं रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ कि इसका रिकॉर्डिंग वेबिनार का हम सब जगह शेयर करेंगे, तो आपके एरिया में जो MP MLAs है उनसे शेयर कीजिए और अवेयरनेस बढ़ाइए जो इमीडिएटली अभी नीड है आवर का. गुड नाइट ऑल. थैंक यू.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Namaste.